This is the mother of all talk shows, Extra, produced under emergency wartime conditions deep underground. As you've probably already guessed, that sting wasn't supposed to be there, but hopefully the rest of the show can proceed uninterrupted. A lot of people have written to me to say that for almost 25 seconds, my monologue was interrupted and it was the sound of silence. Though you saw my lips moving, you heard nothing at all. I'm told that the clips of the monologue are not containing that period of silence. So if you want to check it out, you can on my voluminous social media, which is going up in following by well over 1,000 people a day across my various platforms. And that's one of the reasons, only one, why I'm still broadcasting to you. Now, the Honourable Craig Murray, former British ambassador to Uzbekistan, was invited as a guest at the wedding in Belmarsh Prison today, not since the Ballad of Reading Jail and Oscar Wilde's momentous piece of work from there, has a jail wedding been looked forward to by more people around the world, as I'm sure it was to the bride and groom. The bride looked ravishing when she arrived at the prison, dressed by Vivienne Westwood, but we were unable to see what Julian looked like because no photographs of the wedding were permitted. Imagine, no wedding photographs. Now, I have severe doubts as to the legality of the way that the prisoner, Julian Assange, has been handled throughout all of this period when he's been held in a maximum security jail, accused of nothing in Britain, guilty of nothing in Britain, merely held there pending extradition proceedings. I highly doubt whether it can possibly have been legal to ban the guests of the prisoner, an untried, unconvicted prisoner in Belmarsh Prison. I have severe doubts as to whether the ban on a wedding photograph was legal. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm certainly not Julian Assange's lawyer. But I do pray to God that he blesses the union of Mr. and Mrs. Assange forever, and that they can hold hands freely and walk in fields of gold. And I am dedicating this show tonight to them and to their children who have been cruelly separated from their father for all of these years. And if the courts so decide, will possibly never kiss their father's face again. Just think about that. Now, as I said in the beginning, it's against my religion to speak ill of the recently dead, but every now and again a demise comes along that simply forces one to break that heavenly protocol, and this is one of them. The mass killer, Madeleine Albright, the Secretary of State and ambassador to the United Nations in the Clinton administration in the 1990s, is one of those exceptions. Madeleine Albright was a mass killer, and she justified the mass murder of, at that time, more than 500,000 Iraqi children who died oftentimes before they even knew that they were Iraqis, but who died for no other reason than that they had been born Iraqis in that unfortunate time. 500,000, asked Leslie Stahl of ABC News of Madeleine Albright. If more than 500,000 Iraqi children have died as a result of your sanctions, do you think, asked Leslie Stahl, that it's a price worth paying? Without missing a beat, the now departed Madeleine Albright answered, it's a price we believe is worth paying. Damned from her own lips on the judgment day forever, surely. If there is a judgment day, as I believe that there is for all of us, then surely she is on her way to hell. She is also the bomber of Yugoslavia. In fact, the anniversary of her bombing of Yugoslavia is imminent, and that she has passed away before that anniversary will be seen as particularly significant for the people of Belgrade, bombed for 89 days by the Clinton administration and the administration of Tony Blair. There are other big stories, of course, in the news. We talked about the McCarthyism that is abroad earlier. Well, a local radio station star by the name of Julia Hartley Brewer said on Twitter today, by retweeting a call, that I should be interned in the Isle of Man. This is how fragile civil society in Western countries is right now, and arguably has been for the last couple of years. Dissident voices that they all told us, in the words of Voltaire, that they completely disagreed with us, but they would die for our right to say what we think, have been completely shredded. First it was the vaccine mandates. Then it was the querulous voices raised about the efficacy of the vaccinations on the coronavirus. And now it is the war. Me, almost 30 years an elected member of Parliament, 6 times elected to the British Parliament. Me, a man with an audience numbered in the millions every single week, in the millions. Me with 2 million followers on social media, I should be exiled, interned in a camp in the Isle of Man. That's how flimsy this facade of so-called liberal, so-called democracy actually really is. And the truth is that many, like her, who railed against the mainstream media when it came to Donald Trump, when it came to Brexit, when it came to Nigel Farage, and on the other side of politics, many who railed against the mainstream media in their treatment of Jeremy Corbyn have copiously drunk the Kool-Aid over the war propaganda. And just like that, they are ready to banish, silence, deplatform, cancel, have sacked anybody who disagrees with them. That's the liberty and democracy that we are fighting for. The kind of liberty that ends up with gypsies with their faces painted, tied to lampposts, their pants pulled down and left down, so that they can be viciously assaulted, then sexually abused by any passer-by on the streets of Kiev, in the center of Kiev, in the main square of Kiev. A Ukrainian nationalist, fascist, who knows, beat a group of young gypsy women and their mother, beat them mercilessly with a large rubber phallus, kicked them, punched them, sprayed poison in their faces, all on camera, filmed by their own friends on camera to show how big and brave they are. That's the liberty and democracy that we are fighting for in Ukraine. I was told that it was a figment of my imagination, that ISIS and Al-Qaeda fighters had been brought into the heart of Europe, in Ukraine, by the Ukrainian government and its NATO allies to fight against the Russians. I made it up, they said. In fact, just 24 hours ago, a barrage balloon called Stephen Daisley said exactly that in a Spectator Steerpike piece. No sooner had he written it, no sooner had it been published, than the first video emerged of the ISIS, Al-Qaeda fighters fighting against Russians in Ukraine. Coming to a high street near you once the war is over, with man-pads, SAM missiles, shoulder-held, can bring down an airplane, can destroy a train, can blow up a Christmas market. Watch out and be careful what you wish for. Ernst Thälmann, the leader of the German Communist Party, imprisoned in a concentration camp, I think Buchenwald, in Germany from 1933 to 1944, before the Hitler fascists murdered him in the camp, executed him against a wall in the camp, had a big statue, a beautiful one, made for him. There it is there, in Germany, in presumably the eastern part of Germany. A man murdered by Hitler. A man who once led the second biggest party in Germany. A man who was an anti-fascist fighter. A German man in Germany. His statue is to be melted down because they want to protest Putin's war in Ukraine. Thälmann was German, not Russian. Putin is Russian, but not communist. Why would you destroy a statue to a German communist to protest against Putin's war? Well, for the same reason that you close the Karl Marx Library in a university on the west coast of the United States, because, of course, the famous German philosopher Dr. Marx, who died in the 19th century, has everything to do with a war in 2022 launched by a Russian, the Russian president and the Russian government. That's how flimsy everything is, but it's also how stupid everything is. And I tell you now, remember you heard it here. Just like now that you cannot find any sentient being in the land who will admit to having been gung-ho for the Bush and Blair war 19 years ago in Iraq, certainly no one that will turn up to debate their support of it. And I dare say, just like the people living next door to Auschwitz, who claimed that they had no idea there was a mass extermination camp right next door to them. They didn't know that the smell was burning humans. They didn't know that the ash belonged to millions of Jews, Poles, Slavs, communists, gypsies, disabled people, Jehovah's Witnesses that were being incinerated there. They didn't know. Just like that, I'm telling you now that millions of you have been had, and the time will come, and very soon, that you'll be embarrassed at the twibbons that you sported. You'll be ashamed of the war propaganda that you recycled. And I want to deal with one other issue in the time left available to me. I am certain that the United States, not NATO, I've stopped talking about NATO. NATO is merely the American Foreign Legion. That's all. The United States is on the verge of a false flag WMD incident in Ukraine. Of that, I'm certain. when I saw Joe Biden talk about how, with his back to the wall, President Putin was about to launch a chemical or biological attack in Ukraine. How is Russia's back to the wall? Can idiots not read maps? Can they not look at a map and see how far from a Russian back to the wall the military situation is? And if their back was to the wall, how would their back be able to get off the wall by launching a chemical or biological attack in Ukraine? How? How does that improve their military, political, economic situation? The only people who want a WMD incident in Ukraine are those masters of war who crave more and more of it. The Madeleine Albrights of the 21st century. Those that are ready to fight to the last drop of Ukrainian blood. Those who can turn their eyes away from the swastikas and the jackboots. Those who can turn their eyes away from the gypsies strapped to lampposts being mercilessly tortured and sexually abused. Those who averted their eyes from Babi Yar when thousands of Jews were murdered mercilessly by the Nazis and their Ukrainian allies, led by the man whose banner flies aloft, that blue and yellow flag that you, poor fools, have been worshipping. This is the mother of all talk shows.